Insecurity is a loud companion in early sobriety and in life. In this episode, we are talking about it honestly. So often, when we put down alcohol, we find that we no longer have a way to quiet the inner critic, or in some cases, it fuels the insecurity even more. The key to moving through insecurity is to find ways to do it without the shame and the avoidance that we used to use. Now we use new tools, new mindsets, and the newfound confidence of sobriety. Chris, Emily, Steve, and I are gathering for a heartfelt conversation about how insecurity showed up for us after putting down the drink and what it's looked like to build confidence from the ground up.
Welcome to Through the Glass Recovery Podcast, where we believe that connection is the opposite of addiction, vulnerability is the antidote to shame, and that recovery isn't just rewarding, but it's also a lot of fun. We're your hosts, Steve and Julie. Listen as we get together with friends to shed light on the hard things, talk about the other side of addiction, and how we create a life so full, there's no space left for alcohol.
Stay up to date with new content, new community events, and all the great resources that we offer by signing up for our newsletter. Visit throughtheglassrecovery.com to join the Through the Glass community. We can't wait to get to know you. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for being here today. I just want to say welcome to our listeners. Also, welcome to Chris and Emily who are joining us today. Super happy to be sharing this space with you guys. So we're going to start with just introductions. I'm going to let Chris go first because he's been here once before. So how are you, Chris?
I'm wonderful. Thank you again for letting me be a part of this. To give you a very quick bio, I am a career bartender. I've been tending bar for 25 years. I am a restaurant and bar consultant these days, as well as an advocate for sobriety. And so I am coming into my 10-year anniversary. By the time this lands, I will be 1 month out. Actually, a little less than a month out by that point.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That is that's got to be so interesting and so complicated sometimes to be doing what you do, but clearly you do it really successfully. So, always love your perspective. Thanks for being here. And also we've got Emily with us today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good. How are you?
Good, good.
Good. So I'm Emily. I'm 40 years old. I've got 2 children, husband. I live in just outside of Cambridgeshire in England, and I'm coming up to my year sobriety, 21st of April, so not far off. And yeah, I started an Instagram page about 6 months into my sobriety, just to almost be held accountable and also share how brilliant sobriety is, really. Yeah. So I love it.
Fantastic. Yeah, Instagram is amazing for that accountability piece. And, we've been active on Instagram now for, well, gosh, what, like 3 years. And it is just so cool to see that community growing and supporting each other. And it really adds a super helpful level of accountability to.
It really is its own little community as well. So when you're like flagging and you're struggling, there's always something you can turn.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Cool. And congratulations on your upcoming year. That is a really big deal. That first year is so tough. So we are really proud of you.
By the time this episode comes out, she's going to have already celebrated a year.
Yeah, true. Yeah. No, it's been a roller coaster of a year, but it's like getting to that year. It's like
Absolutely. I did. Really cool. Well, I'm so happy to have both of you here. So, to get into our topic, insecurity can sneak in quietly or it can show up loud and unrelenting. It might be that voice that says you're not enough or you're too much. For many of us, alcohol was a way to quiet that voice, even just for a little while. But once we put down the drink, those insecurities often come roaring back. So, today we are talking about how insecurity has shown up for each of us and how we're learning to meet it with something other than shame or avoidance. What are the insecurities that have challenged you in early recovery? How have they shifted, if at all? What helps you navigate those moments of insecurity now?
I'm happy to go first. Great.
Go for it.
Um, I think one of my biggest ones, particularly in the beginning, was who am I? Who am I as a person? Who am I with a drink in social situations? Just generally, who am I as a person? And being the odd one out, being the different one. As time's gone on, that's got a lot easier. As time's gone on, I liked being the odd one out. I'm happy to be, but at the beginning, that was a big insecurity of mine, how to actually function in any event without drinking.
What did you learn about that? How did you get to the point, like you said, you're happy to be the odd one out now. What do you think got you to that point? Because I know a lot of our listeners are in that place where it's weird to be the only one in a social situation that's not drinking. So what do you think it was that helped you move into, like, I'm really glad I'm the only one?
Um, Being around people that were so I think um I think in the beginning I thought, how am I going to connect with people? How am I going to just have conversations with people, particularly in social situations without having a drink? And then you get to a certain point where you're like, do you ever really connect with anybody when you're drinking?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you really do. And I've noticed that now. I mean, obviously, I'll still speak to people. I'm not a recluse, but yeah, it's kind of navigating that way between actually really connecting what you thought was connecting to what it is actually like having a conversation with somebody sober. And now I just find it a lot easier. I know almost like being the odd one out. I enjoy it. I like being the one that people are like, "Oh, you don't drink, you're not drinking." It was a long process. It wasn't easy in the beginning. It was really, really difficult. Um, but now, yeah, I sing it from the rooftops.
Right. Yeah, you just kinda grow into your own there throughout the process. Like, I wish somebody could have told me at 2 months sober, like, "You're not always gonna feel as awkward as you do right now." Because when you're in early sobriety, especially dealing with all that insecurity of, like, you just don't have anything to, like, smooth the edges over anymore, right? And you're like, I know for me, that thought went through my head, like, "Oh my god, is this what it's gonna be like for the rest of my life? Because this is not a pleasant experience." But no, it is. It's a lot of it is just getting comfortable in your own skin, and the biggest part of that is just practice,
It
right?
is. I shared a post on Instagram that it said something like, early sobriety is nothing like long-term sobriety, so just stick in there. And that really resonated with me because it's so true. Just stick in there, stick with it.
Kind of like it's kind of like a especially in early sobriety, it's kind of like being a toddler with an adult head, right? Like it's that's how awkward it is. You're walking around with like this giant bobblehead. That's what it feels like. It feels like everyone, for me anyways, it felt like everyone was staring at me
Mhm.
because I wasn't doing the thing that I was doing before, which was drinking. So there was one thing that was glaringly different about me was the drink that I was holding in my hand was water, and it wasn't a fancy IPA or a craft beer or a you name it. Normally it was alcohol, and then when that disappeared, the insecurity was, what the hell was I gonna say? How was I going to express that I'm not drinking without you judging me? Because I really cared what they thought. That was important to me. Took a lot of things personally, and what people thought about me was something that I took personally. So learning how to depersonalize everything actually helped me a lot with my insecurity because what I found was when I took things personally, it was because I believed them, and that's the negative stuff too. And so if I realized that if this is something that isn't true, first of all, that I don't care to believe, then do I need to really have this awkward, childish, emotional reaction to it that I am actually having, even though in the moment it feels really real. But for me, it was my inability to say no. Like, how do I change my response and it was still to not stand out? Normally, as a yes man, I just would say yes. Somebody would offer me a drink. What are the words? What's the language that I get to use? And practicing the language, practicing going into public spaces, work environments, and all of that sort of stuff. It's awkward and clunky at the beginning because I haven't experienced how to use the language properly. That took a lot of trial and error because at first it's like, I'm not drinking today. And then it's like, no, I have an alcohol problem. And then I don't need to tell everyone that I had an alcohol problem. It doesn't need to become part of my identity, but that's part of the growth over time through the years. For me, I'm just past 4 years sober, so it's kind of no longer a thing I need to identify myself, to protect myself and hold myself accountable to other people, strangers, and everything else to continue moving forward.
Chris, you're pretty quiet over there.
Well, let you guys do your thing.
Yeah.
When I read this kind of thing you sent in the email, so many things popped up, right? So there's the why, and you always want to start with the why. So why are you insecure? And so you think about the beginnings of why you started drinking, right? So most of us start in our teenage years or our early adult life, and we start drinking, and it's not really a problem, but it becomes a problem over time. But there's usually a reason that it becomes a problem. And I found that through the times I've talked with people and had coaching moments with people, every single person I feel like I've spoken to who has found the other side of drinking, the sobriety side of drinking, kind of has one thing in common, and that there was never really an, I don't want to say never because never is never. That most of the time there is not a biological or a physiological reason that we all drank so much. It was more of a social slash mental reason. And the reason is that we needed a crutch from something. And so I look back and I think, well, what was my crutch, right? And what was the reason that I was drinking so much when I got to a point where I said, and there wasn't one point, there was multiple points down the line of me saying, what the fuck am I doing? I got to stop. I got to slow down. I got to quit. I got to not do this every day. And, that whirlwind you get sucked into kept happening over and over and over. But there was so much going on at that time in my life of why I was feeling that way, why I needed something to crutch onto. And so it was never a wake up in the morning, I'm shaking and I'm like, oh my God, physically need a drink. It was more about going out at night and kind of getting rid of stress or dealing with a fight that I had with my ex-wife or dealing with the feelings of my internal disappointment of who I was being and how I was acting and the guilt that I would wake up in the morning or the anxiety I would wake up with in the morning of who did I piss off last night or what text am I about to wake up to when you first come awake and you don't know what happened really last night or you have these blackout patches throughout the night. So there was always a crutch of something else I was hiding. And so I found that when you take away the crutch, it's like a waterfall and it all comes on you. And by the way, Steve, these days, I think we can actually take your headshot and we can make you an AI version of a bobblehead.
You can make me an AI version of whatever you want, really. Now,
Just saying that I think it might be something to think about for the promo of this episode. It's just you as a bobblehead with a toddler body on. I'm just saying I think it's a good idea.
Anyway, I'll ask ChatGPT if I give it a photo of me, if it could turn me into a bobblehead, and I'll just let it go.
Head action figure Steve, 100%.
You're gonna write that bobblehead action figure save.
So, I think about the when you get rid of the crutch, right? And so the waterfall hits, and you do feel like that. You feel like a toddler. You feel like I would almost use the analogy of you feel like you're going through puberty again, where you feel super insecure and you're angry and you're upset and you're
Like a teenager.
Yeah, you're all over the map, right? You're like a roller coaster. And it takes a long time to not feel like you need that crutch. And it's a process. And I love that saying that the only way through, what is it? The only way out is through.
It's through.
I love that expression because it's true. And so after you do it once and then a second time and a third time of dealing with whatever that may be, maybe you had a really shit day and you just said, normally you would have said, I had a horrible day. I need a drink. Or I had a really stressful day. I need a drink. Or I want to go to this sports event. I need a drink. Whatever that I need a drink was prefaced before, getting through that without it and realizing that you're more than capable of getting through that moment without the crutch, it builds up that self-esteem. And all of a sudden you sort of snowball that way. And now all of a sudden you get to a place where you're like, I don't need the crutch at all. I'm more than capable of handling this. And it's okay to feel like shit. I think that's another big thing that we all forget is that the numbing effect that alcohol or drugs have on us is that it takes away that bad feeling. So at some point, you realize that it's okay to feel bad. It's okay to be stressed out. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to be whatever you're feeling. Eventually, it's going to go away and you're going to come back to your normal baseline happiness, whatever that is. And so that crutch isn't really making you happier. It's just no kind of mulling or numbing down those feelings that you're trying to hide from. But those feelings are being human. That's why you're alive. You're living to feel the ups and downs, the ebbs and flow of life. Life is not always this. And if it was, it'd be boring as hell.
Boring as hell.
Yeah.
But like insecurity is the feeling that comes with being insecure is discomfort. And I drank to soothe my discomfort. So if I'm going to speak about insecurity, I'm really speaking about things I'm uncomfortable with. And the only ways I've found so far to deal with my insecurity, sometimes the shame that's involved with it, is talk through it one way or another. For Julie, it's talk through it, but probably journal through it even
Right.
more. And then go and face it. I need to rewrite the story that I'm telling myself because it's a story. Everything's a freaking story, especially when it exists in my mind.
Yeah.
It's all a story. I need to recreate the story I'm telling myself and go and face whatever that insecurity is so I can rewrite the narrative, because the narrative is what makes me feel the way I'm feeling. And the only way to give myself and prove to my subconscious that I need a new perspective is to go and give it one.
Right.
So my biggest source of insecurity, and this is true, and I know most people start drinking in like their teens, early 20s. I really wasn't a big drinker until my late 20s, early 30s. So my biggest source of insecurity it started way back before drinking did, but it's always been like what people think of me. And I'm afraid of the rejection. I'm afraid of being looked down on. I'm afraid of being talked about. Like so much, and I say I am afraid. I've worked through so much of that. But I used to have to drink either in a social situation or when I got home, because then I was like, "Oh my god, what did they think of me?" And then I would, like Steve said, I would start telling myself stories, I said this thing and I must have sounded so stupid, and so these people are thinking this about me. Like, it was a constant voice in my head, and I think that started when I was probably 14 or 15, honestly, and I had no idea what to do with it, and so, eventually I started using alcohol to cope with either the going there to whatever situation it was and coping with being there, but then also coping with all of that insecurity afterwards too. And so that was a huge part of it. And then the other, again, with what people think, like I have felt like I had to prove my worth and value to the world. That was where I existed. And so I would exhaust myself and stress myself out to the point where then I felt like I needed a drink. Like, I would be busy from 5 a.m. till 8 p.m. every single night, like, just nonstop trying to prove my worth and prove how good I was and prove that I was worthy of love and prove that I mattered. And so then I would be so exhausted. I didn't have any other way to release any of that stress. And so when I look at insecurity, it all goes back to what people think of me. And Steve is right. Like I think I recognized that really early in sobriety, probably a couple months in. And so I was able to really journal through that. And I think the biggest, most effective question that I kept asking myself is, what am I afraid of? What am I fearing here? Because then if I could dig underneath that and figure out what the actual fear was, then I could be like, oh, like that really doesn't matter that much. I'm afraid that people are going to talk about me behind my back. Okay, so if they do, that's all right. I can handle that. But I had to get like down to the fear itself before I could figure out how to cope with that insecurity and let it go and release it. So it was a long process, but for somebody who lived in insecurity for most of her life, like I really am comfortable in my own skin now, and I'm really not as afraid, not at all, of what people think. So it's very freeing in that regard.
Case in point, I have a Julie story
Oh, carry on.
about her being insecure. It was when we first met. We met on a recovery Zoom meeting, and didn't have, when she first joined the meeting, she didn't even have her camera on, and that was all insecurity. It was all completely based on what other people were going to think of her when she turned her camera on. So she's come a very, very long way. But anyways, a little bit of a Julie story there. Are you gonna say anything? Like I didn't say. Okay, it's just a little bit of a Julie story there where she started.
Yeah, no, it's true. I've come a long way. Go ahead, Emily. What did you have?
I was thinking, I was saying with you, you kind of looking at your self-worth and your insecurities. And I don't know about you guys, but any social situation, I would be the same. I'd worry what people think about me, how I was acting. So I drink. And I would always make a bit of a dick of myself. So why am I drinking to hide who I truly am when really I'm just going to make a complete idiot out of myself, and people are probably going to think the worst things of me anyway. But it's like a vicious cycle, isn't it? You just keep going round and around and around, and until the end you are just falling asleep in the corner, but it's okay because you feel all right because people aren't judging you. It's mad, isn't it? It really is crazy when you say it out loud, but that's insecurities for you, isn't it?
Well, you just brought up something very interesting. I mean, you talked about drinking for the insecurity, but did you ever wake up insecure about what you did the night before?
All the time, and you see the pictures and you hear the voice notes and you're told you've done these things and you're like, well, that accomplished a lot, didn't it?
So you drank to get over the insecurity that you don't want to deal with, only to wake up and deal with the insecurity that you have to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's alcohol for pretty much everybody, alcohol creates some kind of absolutely absurd cycle that they're stuck in. And like Chris said, we all have our why. We all have our thing that we're drinking at, right? But no matter what that is, for me, it was insecurity. So I would drink the insecurity away only to do something to make myself insecure and cycle. Or I would drink the stress away and then feel so guilty about drinking the stress away that I would then hustle my way through the next day to prove that I was good enough, only to drink the stress away at the end. Like, no matter what we did, we created this endless cycle for ourselves. Like, the only thing you can do is demand that you choose to put a stop to it.
And the alcohol is just it. What you're doing it to make yourself feel more confident and to stop those voices, those things that you're telling yourself. But it just makes it so much bigger, and it just glorifies it so much more to the next point. Like you say, the next day, you've still got those insecurities, and then it starts again, doesn't it? And it keeps going and it keeps going, and until eventually you just kind of numb all the pain.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, alcohol blows everything out of proportion. I never realized how badly it was doing that until I quit and could look back on that time in my life. But that's, I think for most people, they realize alcohol always made all of your problems bigger and or at least made them seem so big and insurmountable. And once you've stepped away from it for a while, you're like, oh, well, I can handle that, right?
Absolutely.
The other thing I think that's important is understanding that, again, like I said before, you get to a place of confidence once you step away from it for a while, and you understand that feelings happen and they come up, and insecurity is one of the many feelings that none of us are ever going to stop feeling. I mean, no matter what, right? So you're going to have moments of imposter syndrome in your work, or you're going to have moments of insecurity when you say something or do something stupid. Like, it happens, right? I was at an event last week or 2 weeks ago, and I missed a step and I just ate it right on the steps. And, I looked back at the people looking at me, and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I'm totally fine." And we all kind of laughed about it. And who cares? Who gives a shit? And so the idea of being insecure is not going to go away. Like, as soon as I started walking away, I said, like, "I can't believe I missed that step." And when again, you say something stupid, you can laugh about it instead of letting it eat away at you, right?
Laugh instead of lament.
Yeah, no, it's just, again, it's just a confidence thing that you just have to do mindset work on. And I think that's a big part of this, is that you're not just going to stop drinking and you're just going to be like, snap, I'm better. You have to put in the work. And so I always think about how much money I save from drinking. And so the money that I don't spend on alcohol, it goes to therapy. No problem. And it's certainly a better way to spend my money, for sure. And then I've always said that your addiction doesn't really go away. Addictive personalities are addictive personalities. So you have to take away the negative addictive sort of thing that you were doing and replace it with something more positive. So a lot of people end up working out or running. That becomes their positive sort of addiction. I went to mental health slash, I guess, self-help books, and just became a voracious reader when it came to understanding how your mind works and understanding how to build confidence and how to find self-love and how to understand the difference between fixed mindsets and growth mindsets and all of those kind of things. So a lot of biographies and a lot about Olympic athletes, a lot of um, information about people who have sort of become what I aspire to be, right? And whether it's a business thing or a sports thing or whatever it may be, it gives you a perspective and say, those people aren't that different from me. And I can also do those things and I can achieve what I want, but it takes time. It takes effort to do that. And so instead of spending, let's just say, $100 and 4 hours in a bar, now you can spend $100 either buying a book or going on a podcast or whatever that cost of that may be, or you can spend 4 hours working on yourself in some way. You just replace the negative behavior with the positive behavior. And then again, all of a sudden, now I don't read as many books, but I still love doing it. I still enjoy that time where I'm sort of working on myself in a positive way. I don't recognize who I was 15 years ago.
I don't even recognize who I was 2 years ago, let alone 4. Last year, even last year, I would say, like,
Mhm.
I'm still figuring that one out, and I'm still shedding old skins and finding new ones and that sort of thing. You touched on one thing, Chris, that I had a thought of already, and so I'm going to expand on it. And you talked about self-confidence, and I'm going to expand on self-confidence, and I'm going to add self-worth in there too. Because for me, if my self-worth goes in the shitter, my confidence goes in the shitter with it. They kind of swirl in the same toilet. So it worked out when I said shitter. So what happens for me is when both of those, because they go skipping down the road hand in hand, when both of those decide to stop or take a break, when insecurity hits me in those moments, when my self-confidence and my self-worth isn't in a good spot, the cracks in my armor are a lot bigger, and insecurity sets in, and it normally attacks my weakest links first. And so then I was, the word I'm looking for is not spiral, but it's easy to let that continue to ruminate once the crack is and then I've got to normally do something to get myself out of it. And then normally let's talk about it. And then normally there's some sort of action I can do that will create positive forward momentum to help bring that back. And when my self-confidence and self-worth starts coming back, my insecurities go with it. I don't take things personally like I do when my self-confidence and self-worth is in the shitter. I'm more apt and capable of coping with things in life in a better way. And when those two combined stay there, when I continue to just do things that I know are good for me, then I don't have the battle. The insecurities still exist, but I can acknowledge it and say, okay, yeah, you're here. And one of my weaknesses is my fatherhood. Yeah, you're here. I see you. I see where I'm uncomfortable in this space. I can still exist in it without it taking me way farther down a rabbit hole than what is necessary.
Mhm. I want to throw a question out there for you guys really quick. Chris talked about mindset shifts, and I think this has been one of the biggest things that's changed for me from going so insecure I couldn't turn my camera on to really being comfortable in my own skin. And so for you, you were talking about tripping upstairs, right? And I know that if that was me 3 years ago, I would have dwelled on that I mean, I'd like, that's the only thing I would have thought about for days afterwards, right? And we all do things that are just embarrassing. We can't avoid them. We're human, right? We say something, like you said, we say something stupid, we trip, we whatever. And that can, for certain people, especially if you tend to lack a lot of confidence, those little things can kind of make you spiral. For me, one of the most helpful things is imagining, like, okay, what if that wasn't me that tripped up the stairs? What if that was a friend? How would I respond? Would I think less of them? I would probably be like, "Oh my gosh, that sucks. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I know how embarrassing that probably was." And that would be the end of the thoughts that I had about that. And so if I can.
What did you think when I told you?
Exactly, exactly. But when you're in it, you're like, "Oh my god, the world is ending," you know? At least that's how I would have been. So, I guess for me, the mindset shift there is just put somebody else in that position. What would I have thought of them? And it's never as bad as what I think other people are thinking of me. So that's one that works for me. I would love to hear from each of you, like, what is a mindset shift that really helps you move from an insecure place to a more secure place? Do you guys have any tricks or tips or whatever to share?
Emily?
Um, I think for me, and going back to what you were saying, Steve, you know, when you go down that rabbit hole, don't you? Sobriety isn't all just sunshine and rainbows. It isn't just this wonderful thing, and like you say, all your problems don't go away; they're still there. But what sobriety has given me is that clarity to rationalize those thoughts. So when I'm having those thoughts, I just have to just take a step back. And like you say, Julie, even see it as if it wasn't you and it's happening to somebody else. Just take a step back, and it's never really as bad as you think it is. Um, but it having the clarity through sobriety that you can rationalize those thoughts. And I think that's what it is for me. It's just about taking a step back and seeing it through different eyes, really.
Definitely.
So I had somebody tell me once, and I loved this, that everyone in the world is tuned to the same radio station, and that is WIIFM. And that stands for What's in It for Me. And thought it was absolutely incredible. It was one of those things I must have heard this 10 years ago, and it still feels like I heard it yesterday. I love it. And so shifting it from what could be a really negative aspect of everyone's selfish and everyone's greedy and everyone's out for themselves. That's one way to look at that, right? But another way to look at it, which I think will help with people that are listening who are identifying with what you're saying, Julie, is that if you think about it, that everyone's just so self-focused that they're not actually paying attention to you as much as you think you are.
Yeah.
Right? People actually don't care about you remotely as much as you do. People are not listening to you like you think they are. They're not watching you like they think that you think they are. They are so self-absorbed and so self-obsessed that all they're doing is paying attention to themselves. So when I fell down or I guess up the stairs, the truth is that those people forgot that moment 30 seconds after it happened. There may have been, I don't know. Thank God I don't know. There may have been a moment where I walked out of the room and they went, "Oh my God." But that's it. That was the end of it. And then they went on living their own lives and focusing on everything about their insecurities and everything that they were doing that day. And they were living their lives. And Chris falling up the stairs, they do not think about that anymore. That moment is long gone for them. And so when you think about it, that what you're wearing, no one's really paying attention. What you're saying, no one's really paying attention. So if you think about it from that perspective, there is a much more of an ease about the significance of what we do. So for example, like the people listening to this podcast, right? They're here because they want to hear what we have to say. So they're listening and they have an intent to listen and learn and help support and feel good about themselves and hopefully find some um like Emily says, some clarity, right? So, oh, I identify with what that person's saying. I get that. I felt that way. They're here for that. But anyone who is not in that place, right? Like, let's say there's someone who clicks on this podcast, who drinks heavy, and they couldn't care less about sobriety and they're never going to be sober. They might hear all of this and go, whatever, it's gone. So it really doesn't matter if they like it or not because they're not the audience, right? So if you think about it from that perspective, insecurity is kind of almost a waste of time because the people that you're feeling insecure about, they probably don't care. And the people that you actually really do give a shit what they think about, your family, your close friends, the people that you really, really care about what they probably think you're a really awesome person. And they probably couldn't give a shit less when you fall up the stairs or when you say something stupid or when they've done it too, they empathize, and then that's it, right? It's over. So if you think about it like that, I love that whole like what's in it for me attitude because we're all just built like that. That's just the way we are. We're built. Our DNA is about survival, and our DNA is about me, me, me. And so even Mother Teresa was still thinking about her. That's the truth.
Yeah. No, that's very, very well said. I love that.
It's interesting. I have the same perspective, different words. I am not as important as I think I am.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote that down as my answer to Julie's question because that's what I heard that I used to change my perspective based on the exact same scenarios that you thought. Embarrassing story. Julie, you're talking about embarrassing. Julie and I went on a hike yesterday. And so after the hike, and it was a decently strenuous hike, got back to the house. I had to go grocery shopping. And it wasn't until I got home and I stopped at an Asian food market and I stopped at a grocery store. I walked around both of those stores with my fly down. And I didn't realize that until I got home when I went to go change my pants. And I was like, shit. And I wasn't wearing a shirt that was covering it. And it was like pretty wide open. And I'm like, damn it. Like, somebody couldn't have told me. You know what I mean? Like, anyways, it was, there was a moment there where I was like, that was embarrassing. It's more a funny story than it is anything else. But I'm definitely not as important as I think I am. For the most part, in the end, next week, the week after, I mean, there'll be some stories that people will share and that they'll connect with, but that's like a moment in time as opposed to the amount of time just think of all the stuff that we don't remember just in and of ourselves in our own lives. and then extrapolate that to how much of what everyone else has done around you do you remember?
Right. That's
Like,
kind of where I take it.
it's like nothing. It's really nothing. And I mean, if you were a turd in a store for a day, I mean, this doesn't give you permission to be a turd in a store, but in the end, it's probably just going to be a distant memory.
My daughter's when she's 17, she's a 17-year-old girl, you can imagine. And if I'm like getting uptight about something, she says to me, "Oh, Mum, don't worry about it. We're just a tiny dot on a big floating rock." And I'm like, actually, she's just got a good point. Should only worry so much about it.
I love that. I love that that came from yours. I have a 17-year-old daughter too, so sometimes they pop off with the greatest little bits of wisdom, and I'm sure it probably came from some, like, Snapchat reel, but, like, I'll take it. If that's her mindset, let's go with that, because that's not how I was at 17, so good for these girls, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, if I grow up with a perspective like that, I would have probably been a lot more secure in myself, knowing that I am just this little speck on a giant floating rock in this space thing that
Gonna
we've
walk
all learned.
around with your music.
Could just do that permanently and it won't even matter. Anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap this one up. What a awesome conversation we had about just insecurity in general, early sobriety, later on in sobriety, what it looks like now, mindset shifts, changes. Just a really, really cool, relatable conversation. I want to say thank you, Emily, for spending some time with us. And it was wonderful to meet you, Chris. It's great to see you again. So thank you guys for your time. Thank you for your perspective. I hope our listeners get something out of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Don't forget to leave a rating and review if this podcast episode was helpful for you. It only takes a minute, and it goes a long way in helping us spread the word about this amazing resource that we've all created together. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.